Hey guys, Mike Toy, Bonsai Boise. So today I'm going to be working on my Katsura Japanese Maple. As you can see, it's doing really well. It's leafed out and it's growing pretty vigorously. So we're going to be doing two things today. We're going to be doing a trim just to kind of get it back into the shape and do some general, just for some maintenance, more or less, just so that light can penetrate the inside and so the weaker, smaller branches and leaves don't die off. And also just to work on the structure and the ramification of the tree. And then two, I'm going to be repotting it. And I know what you're thinking. It's all leafed out. It's late May, not the time to repot a tree. And you'd be correct. However, there is a potential problem with this tree, and it could be a potentially serious problem, maybe even fatal. So I'm going to give you an inside look at what that potential problem is. And then that will maybe help you understand why we're going to repot the tree. So come with me, let's jump in and get to work. All right, so I'm back. So here's my Katsura Japanese Maple that I've had for 3 or 4 years now. I bought this from a nursery here in Boise. I'm pretty sure it was about 3 years ago. I think it was 2016 or 17. I'd have to look. And I've been very happy with it. It's a lot of fun. It's really pretty. It's, you know, it leaves out all these awesome colors in the spring, and then it turns green. You know, it gets a darker green, as you can see, as the year goes on, and then it turns all kinds of brilliant colors in the fall. So I've been really happy with it. However, there is a potential problem, and I'll give you a quick look at it here.
Okay, so I'm going to zoom in here so you can see what I'm talking about. As you can see, these really dark, unnatural looking spots. I suspect it could be something called verticulum wilt, which is, I believe, fatal to trees. Once they get it, it's just a matter of time, at least as far as I can tell. I have had it in one other tree. It was a Japanese maple. It was a coral bark, and it killed the tree. But I also have reason to believe that that may not be the case. So frankly, I don't know. I don't know if it is or if it isn't. But I'm going to repot it either way, just to get it out of this old soil and into some new, fresh soil. So I'm going to go over some of the reasons why I think it may or may not be verticulum wilt.
A little bit about verticulum wilt is once you get it, that's it. It's done. There's no cure for it, at least I'm aware of. Everything I've read has said that once you get it, it's too late. The best you can hope for is if you see it like way out here on a branch, is you can cut that branch off and maybe you have stopped it from getting to the rest of the tree, but probably not. It's mostly bad news when you get it. So I'm hoping that's not what it is. Now I have had it on one other tree. It was a Japanese maple. It was a coral bark Japanese maple. And that's the type that the bark is really red in the wintertime. And I got that real bad. I'll put a link to the video showing you what that looks like right here. So that's what happened there, and sure enough, the tree died. There was no saving it. I mean, it was really bad on that tree though. So I'm hoping that's not what this is. There are other things that can cause spots like that. There was too many to even mention, but I read up on some are fatal, some are not. A lot of things that I read said that one thing you can do is just repot it. It could be something in the soil. It's mostly caused by infections and bacterias getting into the bark after you make a cut, especially if you make cuts in the fall, which I don't do. So I'm hoping that isn't what it is. But when you make a cut in the fall and then it sits outside in a cool, wet environment all winter, that's when verticulum wilt can set in and damage or kill your tree. So I'm hoping that's not what it is. Other reasons that I'm thinking it may not be verticulum wilt is that it was really just isolated to a couple of spots there on the trunk, not on the branches anywhere. I looked it over pretty good. I mean, I saw a few colored spots here and there, but not very bad. And like I said, it just could be anything. So last but not least, my other sort of last hope that it's not verticulum wilt is look how good the leaves are doing. So usually with verticulum wilt, the leaves are starting to wilt down, not like in the fall. In the fall, leaves get dry and crispy and then fall off. Verticulum wilt affects them differently. They're more like, they sort of shrivel up and get like like wet almost, but they're dying and they're wet at the same time. So you can tell a difference. I could tell a difference the year that I lost my coral bark tree. And I didn't know what it was at the time. I was like, oh, this is weird. Sure enough, it killed the tree. So I've got some reasons to hope that that's not what it is. Now, as far as trimming and repotting, I've got a pot that is not a whole lot different than the size of this pot. It's a little bit smaller width-wise, but it's also a little bit deeper. So the goal is to trim as little roots as possible. At the same time, I'm also trimming a lot of foliage off today, which will compensate. So in other words, what I'm getting at is you shouldn't repot a tree at this time of year in general, but you can still get away with it. I mean, I've done it before on maples and, you know, they live. Sometimes they get a little wilty and, you know, a little sappy, like they're sad. And so you just keep them in the shade, make sure the soil stays moist, not sopping wet, but moist, and definitely not dry. And they usually bounce back, or at least they have for me, when I repot at this time of year. So just to recap that, I'm gonna do as little root pruning as possible, but I wanna get all the soil out. So I'm gonna bare root it, get it in some new soil, put it in a new pot, and trim some of these leaves back. So without further ado here, let me give you a little bit of a better look here at some of the insides of this tree, and then I'll show you where we're gonna make the cuts. Okay, so here's a good look at the branches here. So a couple things about these Katsura Japanese maples that I have learned is that they do back bud a lot, and they like to sprout lots of branches from the same location. Let's see if I can find a good example here. I've been trying to train this one to not do that so much, but you know, they have a mind of their own. So here's an example there. It's back budding way back here. You can see at the top here where all these branches are coming out of the same location. Hopefully you can see that if I can get some of these leaves out of the way. So you can see a lot of leaves coming out of the same location there, and then even more buds popping up at the same spot. So that's pretty common for these trees. That's one reason why I choose to stay on top of them with pruning rather than letting them grow wild. Because if you've seen previous videos that I've done on this, I've tried a hedge style pruning method and a clip and grow method. The hedge style just means, you know, you let it grow wild, you do zero maintenance work inside, you prune it down just like a hedge, just into the shape you want, and then you leave it alone for the rest of the season, and then you do it again towards the end of summer, but before fall. There's pros and cons to that. That is actually the healthiest way to do it with these trees. However, it costs you in other ways, because by doing that, light doesn't penetrate the inside very well, and so, you know, some of the weaker, smaller branches inside end up dying off. Clip and grow is not as good for the tree, but it does, you know, stay on top of the maintenance more, so you get less scars, because you have to make, you know, you're making the cuts when it's early rather than later on. So anyways, I won't over explain that or overcomplicate it, but I'm choosing sort of a mix between. I do kind of a hedge pruning just to get it down into shape, and then I do some of the obvious maintenance type pruning. I will say one thing I'm happy with is this was always the front right here, this being the back, and I could not get anything to grow on the back of the tree here. So for the longest time I was trying, it just wouldn't. I finally got a little branch here, so I'm just babying this little branch. I'm not touching it or anything, because I wanted a branch to grow out of the back like that. So I am happy with that. Okay, so I'm gonna trim this back quite a bit in some areas here, and I'll fine tune it in a minute, but first I'm just gonna get rid of some of the really obvious big long branches here that I know are gonna be too long overall. My eventual goal is to do some pads on this tree. That's why I've got some of these really longer branches like this, because I want to have some pads, you know, pad here and there and pad here. But we're not there yet, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. Now I'm just going to get it down into kind of a shape. I'm just going for more like a sort of a dome shape, I guess you could say. It's still early enough in this tree's development that I'm not getting too nitpicky on the shape or anything. I'm just keeping it in somewhat decent condition, size-wise that is, so that it doesn't get out of control. Whoa, look at that. So I just noticed something. Here, I'm gonna clip this and give you a better look. I just noticed this. There's some type of bug on there. Those are eggs of some type. I don't know what it is. See if I can get to focus here correctly. Well, I'm glad that I noticed that. I don't know, it may be nothing, but it was definitely, it's definitely not good. You never want to see eggs growing on your tree like that. So it didn't look like aphid eggs to me, but I know that aphid eggs can take lots of different, they can look a lot of different ways. So maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I'm not gonna dive in too deep to that at the moment because I just don't know. I'll do a little more research on that when I'm not in the middle of working on the tree. So I'm almost done with just getting this back into size and shape here. So you can see it's sort of just coming back into shape. I don't want to go down too low because I was trying to develop certain areas of this tree. So in fact, this is one of the areas. I'm actually halfway thinking now the back that I've always had picked as a back could end up being the front. I don't really know yet. I'm keeping my options open, but either way, I did want some development back here. So I'm happy to see that. So I see a couple other areas here that need just a little attention. Even if it's just a little bit overgrown, I still, if nothing else, like here, for example, I'll still clip just the ends off just to work on ramification. So that way, rather than growing long in the inner nodes, give you an example here. See how here, the inner node, meaning the area between each leaf set, is very long. It's probably 2 inches here. When you clip the ends off, then it back buds somewhere further down the line on the branch, and then the inner nodes, you'll have an inner node here. And so then it's only 1 inch apart. And so you get more and more ramification, the leaves end up getting smaller, and you get more of that bonsai look that we're going for. So that's another reason I'll just clip the ends off. I do see some of the leaves kind of wilted looking. Let's see if I can give you an example here. But I think what that is just crowding, because there's so many branches crowded in this one spot. So I don't think that's an indication of verticulum wilt, like we were talking about earlier. So I'm not too concerned with that at the moment. Okay. So that's got it somewhat down into shape now. From here, I'm actually going to dive in a little deeper and do a little bit more intricate work on the inside just to kind of thin out some of the areas that are overcrowded and get rid of any type of double branching and, any area where I see more than 2 branches coming out of one spot. If there are 3 or more, I'm always going to remove one of them because you only want 2 branches coming out of one spot. Because obviously if you have too many branches coming out of one spot, you get a swelling right there. And so you don't get any type of taper, any type of uniformity. It can be smaller down here and then it gets big right there and it just looks goofy. So that's why you only want 2 branches coming out of one spot and not more. So I'm actually going to speed this part up here just while I work on some of the inside stuff so it doesn't take all day long. So bear with me here for a moment. All right, so got it pretty well trimmed down to shape now. I didn't go too crazy. As you can see, it's still pretty crowded in certain areas, and that's okay. I didn't want to get real aggressive with the cuts at the moment. I just wanted to get it down into shape a little bit and remove some of the foliage, so that way I can get away with removing some of the roots, assuming I have to remove some of the roots, which I'm sure I will. This hasn't been repotted in about 2 years, so I'm pretty sure it's going to have a decent root system in there. So I'm going to go ahead and take it out of this pot now and bare root it, and we'll put it into the new pot. So let's dive in. All right, so got the roots pretty much rinsed off now. And I would say that, you know, they're not terrible. I've seen better and I've seen worse. But it's a little healthier than I maybe thought it might be. So I'm happy with that. But a couple things I'll point out. So I've got this sort of an aerial root. That looks to be dead for the most part. So I'm gonna remove that right now. I can find my little tool, there it is. So I'm just going to remove it like this. So that's gone. Now ideally, I'd be working on these roots a little bit more, because as you can see, you've got these two big roots coming off of the sides here, and then down about an inch or so, and then this is where a lot of roots are growing. And I don't want that much space. I would want this a little bit flatter. But at the same time, because of the concerns that I had for the tree and because of the time of the year, I don't want to get really aggressive with the roots. So what I am gonna do is just a light trim on any areas that I think might be dead. Like, as you can see here, these white roots, those are clearly alive. So you want to keep as many of those as possible and get rid of any roots that appear to be dead, like the one I just removed a moment ago. Like this, that would probably be dead. Now I'm not gonna get super nitpicky and look for every single one, but I'm gonna look for batches that appear to be dead, which I'm really not seeing too many. I'm gonna trim maybe an inch off of the edge all the way around. Let me give you an idea of how it looks laying down here. So that's about how it looks with the roots all combed out. And the new pot is slightly less wide than the last one, but it is a little deeper, so this will be fine. So I'm just going to trim around the edges now, maybe just a little bit, and we'll see how that looks here. I'll bring out that new pot here in just a second, and we'll give it the little eyeball test and see how it looks. I'll give you a look underneath here too. So I do like how the roots are growing out more radially than more horizontally, I should say, rather than vertically. Out instead of up or down. So that's how those look. So not bad, you know, not bad. I do have a little more hope now for this tree after seeing how everything looks. It doesn't look terrible. So let me just grab this pot right down here. Okay. So this is the new pot. Let's see how well that's gonna fit. Looks like I'm gonna have to take a little more off of the edges, which I'm not thrilled about having to do, but you gotta do it. I kinda knew I was gonna have to do it going in. And again, the reason that I'm somewhat cautious with root pruning right now is just because it's not the ideal time of year to be doing this. You can get away with it most of the time, but you still don't wanna push your luck too much. Yeah, I'm gonna have to take off more. And it doesn't necessarily always hurt the tree to have some of its roots pruned. In fact, a lot of times it actually sparks new root growth. Okay, just a little more off this edge here. I'm gonna have it sitting up right around there, so that'll be fine. So I'm not gonna trim any more roots than that. So it'll sit in the pot just like so. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna get this pot ready. I'm gonna put a screen or a net over this drainage hole and put a little bit of pea gravel over top of the net just to hold it down and to ensure that it doesn't get clogged with real small particles and so that it can drain properly. I would typically have chosen to drill additional holes in a pot like this, but I had a hard time drilling through it. I didn't have the correct drill bits with me. So I'm gonna take my chances here and I'm just gonna be very mindful of the watering on this. So anyways, what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna put the net on, put some pea gravel on, put the soil in, put the tree in the soil, and then work the soil into the roots. So follow me. All right, so there it is. So I'll give you a little spin here. So a couple things I'll say on this one as I close it out is that I don't know what to expect, I guess, first and foremost, because of those spots on the bark. I don't know what it is. I'm hoping it's not that verticulum wilt or something like it or something worse. Hopefully it's not something as bad. So don't know what to expect. For all I know, it could be, and it could just die. Other things I'll point out is that normally I would have given this more of a haircut. Especially like this branch here, I really debated on because it kind of comes back inward. You know, I thought about getting rid of it, but I decided against it just because at the moment I really don't want to hinder its health or its growth any more than I have to. The whole point of this was because I wasn't sure what was going on with it, and I wanted to hopefully prevent any problems from happening if this is some type of disease on the tree. So, but that's that. So I hope, I hope you got something out of this. Maybe you've experienced something like it, you know, the verticulum wilt type issue, or and maybe this will help a little bit. If nothing else, I'll keep you updated on how this goes. And if it dies, I'll post that it died. If it lives, I'll post that it lives. And I'll show you the health of the tree just so that way, you know, maybe we can all learn something from this. So I do appreciate you watching. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do, because you can see updates on this and get notifications on this tree and other trees that I do. I've got several species. A lot of them are just pre-bonsai. But I like to document the journey with a lot of them, just so for my own sake and for everybody else's sake. So I appreciate everybody who does like and subscribe. Thank you if so. And if you've got any good comments or any good experience with these or this type of issue, please feel free to comment. I learn a lot from just reading through the comments and getting in discussions with you guys, and I learn a lot from it. So I appreciate everybody who does. So anyways, thanks for watching and have a good day.